Hello friends and welcome to this, your guide to the most haunted, horrifying and downright hellish places on earth. In these videos we talk you through some of the spookiest tales and urban legends from towns and cities across the world, and today we're going to be looking at 5 of the most terrifying tales from the city on the Liffey, Dublin, Ireland. Number 1. 13 Henrietta Street. Henrietta Street has become an extremely popular tourist trap in recent years, offering a glimpse into Georgian-era Dublin, with restored tenements such as 14 Henrietta Street now open to the public as a museum. Its neighbour, number 13, boasts a different kind of appeal. Used as a filming location and even to host numerous events, 13 Henrietta Street has long been plagued by numerous reports of paranormal occurrences. The palatial red-brick Georgian houses of Henrietta Street were once one of the most elegant sights in the city, but by the 1900s the road had fallen into ill repair. It's about this time that the legend of the lady at the window took root. Multiple people had reported witnessing a woman, dressed as if she were from another time, standing at the window of 13 Henrietta Street, watching people at night, long after the street had become a disparate collection of tenement buildings. When people who had claimed to see the lady began to meet with suspicious, unnatural deaths, investigators found that the particular room in number 13 that the lady inhabited had once been the location of an exorcism performed on a young Catholic woman in the early 1800s. The girl didn't survive, but it's clear that to this day she refuses to leave her haunting home. Number 2. The Black Church. The short trip south of Dublin's infamous Mountjoy Jail will bring you to the steps of St Mary's Chapel of Ease, better known by its local nickname, the Black Church. Some locals will tell you that the church gained its name from the type of calp limestone used to build it, which takes on a darker hue when wet. But far more will tell you the name actually comes from the chilling chapel's reputation as being a threshold between this world and hell itself. Soon after the church was built in 1830, the locals began to move away, slowly but surely, to the south side of Dublin, as though some unsettling presence had taken root in the area, forcing most God-fearing people away from the sharp, needle-like spires of the Gothic-style building. Soon rumours began to circulate that if you were to circle the church 3 times at midnight, you would summon the devil himself, who would try and bargain for your soul. The legend became so widespread that it's been written about by numerous famous authors, including James Joyce, who chose the chapel as the location for one of the sins committed by main character Leopold Bloom in his masterpiece Ulysses. Famous Irish poet Austin Clarke wrote about his memories of the church as well, in his 1962 piece, Twice Around the Black Church. You'll note even Clarke stopped at the second trip round. Today the church sits at the heart of its neighbourhood still, a dark, ominous edifice with no green to be seen around, conspicuous in its foreboding presence right at the heart of the city of Dublin. Number 3. Copperface Jack's. Famous Dublin nightclub Copperface Jack's, known simply as Coppers to the locals, may not seem like a likely place for a haunting, but this particular ghost actually resides a few doors down from the drunken revelry of the infamous nightlife hotspot. The club takes its name from an 18th century hanging judge named Lord Clonmel, nicknamed Copperface for his reddish complexion. Clonmel was a hate-filled man in life, and was hated in equal measure by the citizens, as he was said to show no mercy to any person unlucky enough to find themselves on trial by him. It's thought that he was responsible for the execution of hundreds of locals, and would regularly find himself confronted by the angry families of the men he put to death. As Bobby Sands once said, however, our revenge will be the laughter of our children, and today, if reported to be believed, the red-faced Rubenesque ghost of Judge Clonmel has found himself sentenced to an eternity of witnessing the revelry and celebrations of the descendants of the people he put to death. Number 4. Marsh's Library. It wouldn't be a proper list of hauntings without a library, and with Marsh's boasting the title of the oldest library in Ireland since 1707, You can rest assured knowing that this list is no different. Marsh's library also boasts one of the saddest spectral inhabitants we've covered. In the early 1700s, the niece of the library's founder, Archbishop Narcissus Marsh, ran away and married a sea captain. Although they fled for love, Marsh's niece was overcome with guilt for what she had put her uncle through and wrote him a letter begging for his forgiveness, which she hid in a book in the library before she was spirited away by her love. We can only assume that hiding the letter in a book in a building where people come to take the books away was perhaps not the best idea, as to this day several people have claimed they've seen the ghost of the Archbishop wandering the halls of the library, endlessly searching for the lost letter. Number 5. The Hellfire Club. Up there with the Freemasons as one of the worst kept secrets among secret societies, the Hellfire Club is a name given to a particular type of fraternity, founded in the 18th century, whose sole purpose was to allow well-regarded, upper-class people of quality with reputations to protect to engage in morally questionable, perverted or taboo acts of debauchery without being exposed to public scrutiny. Although there have been many Hellfire Club chapters down the years throughout England and Ireland, with some active even to this day, our story concerns the now defunct building associated with a secret society in the Wicklow Mountains area. The story goes that for centuries the crest of Montpelier Hill loomed over the city of Dublin and was occupied by nothing save a Neolithic passage grave, a type of burial chamber usually covered in earth or stone with a single entry and marked at the front with a burial cairn. In the 18th century, however, the view and the vantage point proved too much to resist for one William Connolly, the Speaker of the Irish House of Commons and one of the richest men in Ireland at the time. He ordered a hunting lodge to be built on the hill, using stones from the passage grave, an act of defilement that angered many a fearful local. Soon after the building was completed, Connolly died, and the site was left abandoned for several years until the Hellfire Club began renting the lodge from the Connolly family in 1735. Dublin's Hellfire Club was a place for wealthy young gentlemen to drink, gamble, hire prostitutes, and even allegedly engage in more degenerate activities like animal torture and Satan worship. Their motto was, "Do what thou wilt." The remote and reputedly cursed location of the club led to even wilder stories about the goings-on there. One story states that late one night a priest called on the house to see what was really going on. In one version of the story, when he entered the house, the centre of attention was a huge black cat with ears so pointed that they resembled horns, sitting in the chair reserved for the devil himself. The priest immediately sensed evil when the cat started snarling at him and threw holy water on the cat, which turned into a devil-like figure and ran outside, burning down the roof as it left. There are tales of black masses and human sacrifices, one of which led to the lodge catching on fire and killing several members. There's even a story of the club members kidnapping, killing and eating a farmer's daughter. But the most famous story involves a mysterious stranger who wandered in one dark and stormy night. The stranger joined a card game already in progress. At one point, a player dropped his card and bent down to look under the table for it. As he looked, he glimpsed the stranger's legs and realised that the man had cloven hooves. When the stranger was confronted, he burst into flames and vanished. Through the years, the Satanic Society burned the building at Montpelier so bad that it became unusable, and after years of waning activity, the society eventually disbanded in 1800 when its last active member, Thomas Buck Whaley, died. To this day, anybody who wanders Montpelier, known locally simply as the Hellfire Club, comes back with similar stories, usually involving jewellery, particularly necklaces and crucifixes, being pulled and dragged by unseen hands, sometimes to the point of snapping. Many have reported sighting the ghost of the black cat made so famous by the club, and perhaps most chillingly are the stories of those who brave the hill at night, who say you can hear the screams of a young woman who was famously stuffed in a barrel, set on fire and rolled down the hill by the club in one of its twisted nights of revelry. One thing's for sure, if you are not prepared to face the palpable presence of evil that looms over the Hellfire Club to this day, steer well clear of the Wicklow Mountains. Number 6. Kilmainham Jail. Our final place on this list of haunted locations in Dublin is one of the most famous sites in the entire country and carries with it a long and heavy history of death and despair. So it's no wonder that ghost stories and uneasy presences have been reported here almost non-stop throughout the years. A former prison in Ireland's capital, Kilmainham is now owned and operated as a museum by the Government of Ireland and is open to the public. Kilmainham Jail is most famous for being the place where many Irish revolutionaries, including the leaders of the 1916 Easter Rising, were imprisoned and executed by the British government. The jail used to perform public hangings outside the front until the 1820s, when the number of hangings slowly reduced. Nonetheless, a private hanging cell was built in 1891 on the first floor. Oppression hangs heavy in the air around Kilmainham, as well it may, as the conditions prisoners were held in were said to be reprehensible. There was no segregation of prisoners. Men, women, and children, some as young as 7 years old, were forced to share space in barren cells, often being provided light and heat by just a single solitary candle, which was expected to last at least 2 weeks. Despite the lack of segregation, there was still disparity between the genders, with male prisoners given iron bed frames while female inmates slept on piles of hay on the cold flagstones. Among the jail's most famous prisoners were several of the most influential Irish Republican figures, including Henry Joy, Robert Emmet, Anne Devlin, Podrick Piers, James Connolly, who was executed at Kilmainham but not held there, and perhaps most famously, Joseph Plunkett and Grace Gifford, whose tragic tale of love, imprisonment and execution at the hands of the government is the subject of one of Ireland's most famous songs, Grace.
Oh, Grace, just hold me in your arms and let this moment linger. They take me out at dawn and I will die.
With such a dark history, this jail, built on the most blood-stained soil, has seen reports down the years from prisoners, guards, visitors and staff right up until the modern day of ghostly presences, poltergeist-like movements and eerie atmospheres that have terrified people for centuries now. Many staff complain of presences following them down the hallways. Workmen have claimed to be thrown from scaffolds by unseen forces, and one visitor in recent years claimed a particularly harrowing tale where they were separated from their group and found themselves locked inside one of the jail's many rooms, surrounded by the cries and screams of the inmates who once inhabited it, growing ever louder into a deafening cacophony before being found and released from the room by a concerned member of staff. If you visit Dublin, Kilmainham Jail is well worth checking out, not just as an important historical site of extreme significance, but also for anyone who wishes to truly feel proof of the other side. And that wraps up our look at the top 5 most haunted places in Dublin, Ireland. If you've learned something new today, why don't you give us a like? Or if you already knew every story we told, feel free to give us a dislike. Let us know in the comments below what you thought of the video, any ghost stories or urban legends from your area, or where you'd like us to cover next. Subscribe for more spooky content in the future. Follow us on Twitter @SpatulaTwisted for updates and to get in touch. And until next time, stay safe out there.